Years from now, some of them may look back and ask themselves whether they've made the right choice, whether they've made the most of the opportunities they've been given. Together, we have the same mission. Over the course of your life, you will find that things are not always fair. You will find that things happen to you that you do not deserve and that are not always warranted. But you have to put your head down and fight, fight, fight. Never, ever, ever give up. Don't give in, don't back down, and never stop doing what you know is right. Nothing worth doing ever, ever, ever came easy. And the more righteous your fight, the more opposition that you will face. In your hearts are inscribed the values of service, sacrifice, and devotion. Now you must go forth into the world and turn your hopes and dreams into action. America has always been the land of dreams because America is a nation of true believers. When the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, they prayed. When the founders wrote the Declaration of Independence, they invoked our Creator 4 times. Because in America, we don't worship government, we worship God. It is why our currency proudly declares, "In God we trust." And it's why we proudly proclaim that we are one nation under God. The story of America is the story of an adventure that began with deep faith, big dreams, and humble beginnings. The next generation of American leaders never, ever give up. There'll be times in your life you'll want to quit. Never quit. Never stop fighting for what you believe in and for the people who care about you. Carry yourself with dignity and pride. Demand the best from yourself. The more people tell you it's not possible, that it can't be done, the more you should be absolutely determined to prove them wrong. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. Relish the opportunity to be an outsider. The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. You must keep pushing forward. And always have the courage to be yourself. America is better when people put their faith into action. Pray to God and follow His teachings. Today, each of you begins a new chapter as well. When your story goes from here, it will be defined by your vision, your perseverance, and your grit. You will build a future where we have the courage to chase our dreams no matter what the cynics and the doubters have to say. You will have the confidence to speak the hopes in your hearts and to express the love that stirs your souls. As long as you have pride in your beliefs, courage in your convictions, and faith in God, then you will not fail. As long as America remains true to its values, loyal to its citizens, and devoted to its Creator, then our best days are yet to come.
And welcome to Cold War Radio, ladies and gentlemen, live from studio number 1 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Hutch Bailey Jr., deep down in my broadcast bunker. Please follow me on Spreaker, like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cold War Radio 22. Got a message from Ward today, and that traffic on that page is rocking steady and large. Cold War Radio patron hotline, 412-206-6208. If you're listening to the podcast, the number for the voicemail is 412-567-1460. The email, scrtv@live.com. You can catch the podcast just about anywhere that podcasts are aggregated. Got an email this evening. We just got picked up on Deezer, whatever that is. So if you're on Deezer, you can listen to the show. The show is available on demand at Spreaker.com, the iHeartRadio, the Cold War Radio app, available free in your app store. YouTube has it with captions. Please go to SteelCityResistance.com and become a Cold War Radio patron. That's the best way you can help out the show. You can also catch the Research Room, the video page that has links to all the videos of the audio clips we play, because this is a radio show. If you'd like to write to the show, write to Cold War Radio, P.O. Box 10433, 370 Castle Shannon Boulevard, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 15234. Giving away my age with a little bit of Curtis Mayfield there, but let's go near to far, and let's turn to the west and welcome Sal to the program from Western Pennsylvania, pretty close to studio number 1. Good evening, Sal.
Good evening, Hutch. Good evening, Stacy. Good evening, everyone else, and hope to have some good talk tonight.
Well, I believe we will. Let's get this party started and traverse the turret to the south. And from ATL, from Atlanta, Georgia, let's welcome Stacy Rush to the program. Good evening, Stacy.
Good evening, Hutch Bailey Jr. and Sal and everybody listening out there. I'm glad to be with you guys tonight.
All right, we got a lot of stuff to cover. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to do this in order, because I think we probably ought to talk about this kangaroo court right off the bat. But this is really something. I mean, tonight was the second night in a row that special report with Brett Baer was canceled, and was this kangaroo court that had been going on all day, which I had to watch some of it just to be able to do the program and understand what's going on. And think of, Stacy, all of the things that are not being reported, because that's what we're going to report tonight, a lot of them. You've got just things going on all over the world. The Middle East is upside down. The IDF has attacked, in response to rocket attacks, has attacked Iranian forces near Damascus, Iranian and Syrian forces in Damascus, with a blistering attack from their Air Force. Iran, I've got some stories tonight. I mean, Iran is on fire. Several cities in the country. You've got former President Bill Clinton being investigated by the FBI for homosexual rape of a young boy. I mean, and none of these things, members of parliament in Ukraine are calling on the President of the United States in Ukraine to investigate how Hunter Biden was paid millions of dollars with laundered money. And we're listening to these idiots at this hearing. It's just... I feel like I'm being set up, Stacy. I always do when these things happen, but it just, your thoughts on the whole situation.
Well, I think as most people who pay attention and have common sense, that the entire impeachment hearing is just a complete sham. But I think, you do mention that we're missing a lot of important news because of this, but my understanding is that Horowitz is going to be testifying in early December about his FISA report. And I think a lot of this is to try and distract from, the little drips that are coming out for that. So, they're going to continue on as long as they possibly can. I think that most people have already made up their minds, and the only thing they're doing is potentially switching people over to Trump, because this is, I mean, you've got hearsay after hearsay. You've got just pompous State Department yahoos acting like pompous State Department yahoos that we all hired Trump to fire. So if anything, I think this is hurting Democrats, but I think the IG report and Durham's report is going to hurt them a lot more.
Oh, I do too. And Sal, I got to say, I've seen a couple different things. I've seen some Democrats come out and publicly say they are voting for Trump because of this. When you have an entire corrupt system set up by a guy that looks like Schiff. Now think about this. Adam Schiff is the television trademark of this operation, and he is a diabolical looking dude, man. I mean, you look at those eyes and you can imagine him at Ed Buck's house dressed as an Egyptian, whatever they do at Ed Buck's house. So your opinion on what's going on?
Well, I think it's definitely, I don't know what to call these hearings. I don't want to call them a trial. I don't want to call it a trial. I don't want to call it hearings. If anybody has paid any bit of attention to this, and as well as the mainstream media, they are still being very selective as to what sound bites come out. And their sound bites that are coming out from the mainstream media is definitely anti-Trump and pro-impeachment. That continues on. But if you get to watch some of the hearings, and I've been able to watch them on and off, when you hear the testimony from these people and actual facts, not sound bites, you'll find out that there is really nothing there. At the end of the line here, the president is the one who dictates foreign policy. It's not these deep state hacks, and they are hacks. It's not political donors that happen to get jobs, and it's not really anybody else in the process. The president calls the shots. You want it to change, you got a couple different, you have two choices. Choice one is to vote for someone else. Choice two is to run for president yourself.
That's right.
As to little Adam Schiff, who is a smart little lawyer, and mama raised him well to be a shifty character and a very slimy creature. I don't know what his problems are. Here's what I see. He's obviously the mouthpiece for Nancy Pelosi. As you know, Hutch, most gangsters don't do the dirty work themselves, do they?
No,
they don't.
Not the bosses don't. And
no, the bosses don't. No, the boss sits back and calls the shots and tells their consigliere or their captains, probably their captains. I don't know what type of gangster you want to call him, but I don't want to categorize him. But anyhow, the gang leader of the Democrat Party, and that's Nancy Pelosi.
Or George Soros, one of them.
Or, yeah, wherever follow the money. Good point. She is calling the shots, and he's the mouthpiece. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens after all this tumbles down and it crumbles down into nothing whenever the impeachment articles are passed through the House, which I think we all know here is a done deal, and that's going to happen, and it crumbles in the Senate. I can't see for any good reason that this goes really anywhere in the Senate. And
the thing about the Senate, Sal, is that once the Senate convenes, all the Schiff rules are out the window.
And that's right. And and again, it's the American people that know just how one-sided this is, and in what kind of American court system. And you guys can also confirm this, and I know the answer already. What kind of court system in America allows you not to efface your accuser?
Right. I mean, that's right.
That goes against all American values.
It does.
Let's get the whistleblower out here. Let's identify who he or she or they are. I think it may be a multiple of people in concert.
Well, yeah, it's probably the guy's twin brother, and it's probably Chiramella. But the thing, the thing about this is, this credibility situation is, I mean, when this gets to the Senate, it's going to blow up so badly.
It is going to blow.
If our people do their jobs properly, if we get the right, if you have, for instance, Representative Turner or Representative Jordan or Ratcliffe as our chief prosecutors, the Democrats are dead.
Can they do that, Hutch? Can people from the House be the prosecutors in the Senate trial?
No, it's not. They can. They have to.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Senate. Here, let me set this up because I'm old enough to remember Clinton. The Senate is the jury.
Oh, gotcha.
The prosecutors.
I can't believe I didn't know that.
The prosecutors are the Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee, or they can substitute other people, and the same with the defense for the Republicans. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presides over the trial, and it's a jury trial, and it has to end in 2/3 to convict for it to happen. Anything else is an acquittal, unless Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney and Susan Collins and maybe even Lindsey Graham and some of the rest of the righteously indignant idiots in our party in the Senate decide to make it a what's the word for it? It's an acquittal, but it's only a partial acquittal. It's like
S show. It'll be an S show there.
Yeah, right. A conditional acquittal is what it's called.
Well, and I think you'll probably have a lot of pushback from the Senate candidates, who are running for the Democratic nomination to try and wrap this up as quickly as possible, or even to push to not do it at all. Depending on how these House hearings go.
Yeah, look at so far.
Because you can't. They're going terribly. I mean, the media can spin it, but it's truly going terribly. And if you're smart, you don't want to go down this road any further.
No, getting back to Schiff though, the guy is a vegetarian. That could partially explain his bugged out eyes and the way he looks.
I heard he likes dark.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what kind of.
We will. Yeah. We're going to find out. This is what I say time and time again with these idiot, stupid, criminal Democrats. They open up these cans of worms, and there's nothing in the can but them. Right. If we get to the bottom of this, they're toast. As a matter of fact, I read an article the other day, guys, and it made a hell of a lot of sense. And I think maybe we should adjust fire on who we try to take out here to make this right. Do you realize that if it wasn't for the corrupt corporate media in the United States of America, the Democrat Party would cease to exist in about a month?
Yes.
If they didn't have the cover of these corrupt people, they would be exposed for everything they do. This would have never gone on. This is, I watch Brett Baer reporting on this, and I get sick to my stomach. Brett
continues. Yeah, with these hearings, Hutch, it continues to go on. Every show, I surfed some channels tonight, and all the little juicy sound bites that, of course, support or perhaps support a case against the president, and they don't give the whole picture.
No.
They're in concert. They're definitely in concert.
When you listen to Chris Wallace and Brett Baer and that whole ridiculous crew that I don't really watch anymore except to pay attention to this, every time they open their mouth, they're treating this like a legitimate hearing. What court hearing did you ever hear of witnesses getting an opening statement? If you have an opening statement, then you're part of this. The only lady that didn't do it was Ms. Connor, who looks like a frail little woman that is the only thing in between us and Russia. She's a Department of Defense Undersecretary of State or Undersecretary of Defense for Russia. And she looks like, she's the only one. She said, I don't have an opening statement. I'm here to answer your questions. And that would be what I would say.
Well, hey, Hutch and Stacy, why is it that dangerous for the president to clean house, or is it an impossible?
No, it's not.
Are these the best that we have? Are these the best in the upper echelons of the military we have? Is this the best we have in the upper echelons of our State Department?
Stacy, all I got to say is thank God for President Trump for finally pulling the curtain back on this. What Sal just said is a big part of what I want to talk about tonight, and that's the military. You know, I don't know if you heard it, but somebody in the United States Navy has said that, or they're either they've already done it or they're going to do it on this Taggart guy, a Navy SEAL. They're going to take his trident away, take away his membership of the Navy SEALs. You know, these kind of things, he needs to fire some generals and some admirals. He needs to do it now. I mean, this is something that is, this Vindman guy, I want to play this clip. First, I'm going to let you get your opinion out there, but then I'm going to play a clip. This whole military thing is really, really bad and has to get squared away very quickly.
Well, I think that's really disheartening to hear, Hutch, because you know, if you can get into the upper echelons and infiltrate the military with this PC liberal BS, not following the chain of command BS, then we're in some serious trouble. You know, we know they're in the education system. We know the news media is completely left. And then to have our military turn into it, we're going to be in some big trouble if that continues.
Well, Obama got rid of a lot of warriors. Let me tell you, he got rid of a lot of warriors, and the ones that are in there now, to even consider saying that about this Navy chief is out of control, man. I mean, the fact that he got convicted by a military court is out of control. I mean, you know, these guys are in a war zone. You know, it's not like you know, they failed to make a payment on something. Let's go to Ralph in Missouri. Ralph, hello, what's going on?
Yeah, the story I just posted in the chat room is an up-to-date report on the latest and greatest on the Navy SEAL Gallagher that you just mentioned. Not only are they, which I knew this was coming a long time ago, especially after he was acquitted but found guilty of posing with a corpse, and they busted him down one pay grade. They have been hammering this guy since the moment go, and Trump has intervened officially 3 times. I'm not talking about restoring his rank. I'm talking about they had him confined to quarters. They had him walk around in uniform of the day. He couldn't leave the base. He had to let people know where he was going and when he got back and all this other stuff. And then even after the defense was getting Navy achievement medals after they lost the murder case but got the conviction on the lesser charge, Trump intervened there and said, nay, 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 not today. You're not getting a bunch of lawyers who freaking bugged with spyware on the defense lawyers' phones and stuff because you supposedly thought they were leaking information to the media.
Now, Ralph, I don't have too much time. I have a guest coming on, but I want to ask you a couple quick questions because you're a Navy veteran.
Right.
What are people in your circle feeling about the president, lifting these? And explain to the listeners who maybe might not know that it's not a big deal. He only lost a rank. Explain to the listeners the vast difference between E7, which he was, and E6, what he got busted back to. Is that a big difference?
About $200,000 is what I understand. I haven't looked at a pay scale recently, but
not just the pay though. Not just the pay. The difference between all I can speak of is to the Army, and in the Army, a sergeant first class in E7 is part of the untouchables, and E6 is just NCO. I mean, nothing against E6. It's one of my favorite grades, but is it the same in the Navy?
Yeah, pay grade is pay grade. You guys get, like, my retirement check comes out of Cleveland, Ohio, defense department, whatever,
Defense.
and all that. And then everybody gets theirs from the Army, Air Force, whoever gets their check from there. But it's all the same pay scale. If you retire as an E6 in the Air Force, Army, whatever, it's all the same.
Right. And it all comes from the same place you get yours, from DFAS in
Right.
Cleveland.
Exactly.
All right. So there you go. I mean, what do you think about the leadership in the current Navy? Do you think there's a possibility that there's anti-Trump people in there that will actually try to action their opinions?
Actually, you're closer to the truth than what you realize. All the stories that I've been posting off and on for the past 6 months, because I get all the military news feeds and the Department of Navy and all that stuff on my Facebook account, and I've been noticing a ton of high-ranking admirals, generals, Marines, colonels, you name it, in charge, getting relieved of their command for one thing or another, and all that. As a matter of fact, the former chief of naval operations, who was just relieved from this other, the CNO that's in there now, and all that, that's where they're trying to draw loggerhead on this thing with Trump, because he keeps intervening, and the media's trying to run this deal that like he doesn't understand and all that when a guy's getting screwed. But Gallagher getting his trident taken is something that they can do in-house if the two-star admiral right now, as it says in that story there, they're also, not to lose track here, they're going after the same thing for Gallagher's division officer in SEAL Team 7 and his commanding officer at that time when that incident occurred.
Unbelievable.
They're trying to hammer everybody.
Man,
to make examples out of them. As they say.
Well, I'll tell you what, like I said, and thank you for calling, Ralph. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate your knowledge. But, this whole thing is when you have senior military people doing this, there's only one thing to do. I mean, there's only one thing. He's got to drop the hammer down. He has got to clear this out. And really, what I would do is I would create a task force. I would create a task force, and I would look at people. I would figure out it, because you can't just do it because you don't like them. You could, but it would be a media firestorm. But you would have to justify it that this is antithetical to the Constitution of the United States. I mean, you have to have civilian control of the United States military. Plain and simple.
You can't have these rogue people or rogue groups of people who want to do what they want and think they're the ones calling the shots.
And that's what's happening. And that's what's happening right now. I mean, you listen to these people that are testifying, and you would swear that they have more allegiance to Ukraine or the EU than they do to their own country and their own boss. I mean, and I'm qualified to talk about this. I was 35 years in the United States Army. I served for, hold on. I served under every president since Ronald Reagan, and I never once considered going against what the president said. I mean, it's just something that you have to have in your DNA when you're in the military or in the United States government. You have to be apolitical. You can have opinions, but that's as far as that goes. Ladies and gentlemen, Christine Watkins is the founder of Queen of Peace Media and author of The Warning, Testimonies and Prophecies of the Illumination of Conscience. Mrs. Christine Watkins, welcome to Cold War Radio. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr., and I'll introduce my co-host in a minute.
Thank you so much. It's good to be on the show.
Well, thank you. I also have Sal with me in Western Pennsylvania.
Hello, Christine. It's really nice to be able to speak to you.
Same here.
And Stacy Rush from Atlanta, Georgia.
Hey, Christine, we're glad to have you this evening. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Stacy.
Mrs. Christine Watkins, MTS LCSW, You're going to have to explain what those two things are in a second. Is an inspirational Catholic speaker, author, and radio and television host. Formerly, this is the part that really got me, formerly an anti-Christian atheist. She began a life of service to the Catholic Church after a miraculous healing from Jesus through Mary, which saved her from death. Before her conversion to Catholicism, she danced professionally with the San Francisco Ballet Company. Mrs. Watkins is the author of the bestseller Full of Grace, Miraculous Stories of Healing and Conversion Through Mary's Intercession, and the #1 Amazon bestsellers of Men and Mary, How 6 Men Won the Greatest Battle of Their Lives. Now, I got to say that in this era that we're in, Mrs. Watkins, when you hear reports of Christianity falling in the United States, less and less people identifying as Christians, and other stories like that, and you look at the moral decay of our society, really, I look to your story and say, is this a key to getting back to where we need to be? Just anything you want to talk about to the audience? And your own story is phenomenal. How about telling us about that?
I think conversion stories are key. We can't really follow the truth or have great love in our hearts and forgive our neighbors and do what we're supposed to do, follow our true calling on earth, unless God is present in our lives and our hearts. He's always present, but we have to allow him in. And I did not allow him in part because I was raised in a family that told me there was no God. And I ended up, we all have a God-shaped hole in us. And so I filled that hole with ballet because we have to fill it with something. And I practiced it diligently for years, ended up dancing with the San Francisco Ballet Company. And I got injured and I ended up having to lose my career, but it was so devastating for me because it wasn't just what I loved, it wasn't my career, but it was really the only God I ever knew. And I grew depressed and I lost hope. And in my sadness, I turned to intimate relationships for comfort. And I fell deeper and deeper and deeper into very serious sin. And there was a moment, I didn't know what prayer was. I certainly didn't want to have anything to do with Protestant or Catholic Christians. They were following a fairy tale and highly embarrassing people. And, you know, now that I am one, I admit I am highly embarrassing. But I ended up very, very sick. It turns out I had cervical cancer due to my sin. My hair was falling out. I was bleeding internally. I couldn't keep food down. I didn't have enough energy even to walk across the street. And my soul was sick, which is worse than being sick in body. I was sick in my soul. And I did not want to have anything to do with the Lord. Didn't know about his mom and that she could be helpful. And my friend was praying for me. He was Catholic, but he kept his faith very secret. And which was a shame because the Lord wanted him to share it with me. But in time he did because he was praying for me as I was lying down not feeling well. And I felt a beautiful presence around me and within me. And I felt a loud pop inside of my body. And I asked him, I said, Joseph, what just happened? What was this ecstatic peace and joy that I've never felt before? And he said, Christine, Mother Mary looked at you from heaven just now, and she took pity on you, and she asked her son to save you. And it turns out the cancer was gone.
Wow. That's pretty
And
heavy.
so, yeah.
That'll change your mind. Now, you didn't just hop into it and go to church. You actually hold a master's degree in theological studies from the Jesuit School of Theology at Berkeley, and another master's degree in social welfare from the University of California at Berkeley School of Social Welfare. Not sure what that's all about, but obviously you're educated in the subject matter.
Yes, I knew that I was to go from a life of serving myself to serving others, and so I did that. I started to work in, I've given talks in churches all around the country and written several books, and worked in hospice for 10 years, hospice care with the dying, worked with people who've been through abortion and grieving and regretting it, and through retreats called Rachel's Vineyard, rachelsvineyard.org. Please go if you've been part of an abortion, rachelsvineyard.org. Beautiful healing retreats. And so I was always faced with life and death, I guess you would say, since I had lived through something, the life and death almost of my body and almost of my soul, that the Lord kind of had me go out and help others in difficult situations. And so now this latest book, the one that kind of brought me on the show for, it's called The Warning, Testimonies and Prophecies of the Illumination of Conscience, is very much a soul life or death matter, and even a physical life or death matter. And that I did all this research over the last 8 years. I sense that I should write about this. It's a very unknown and yet should be known by the world occurrence that has been prophesied by holy people starting in the 1500s up to today. And there are people very reputable, very authentic, scrutinized by the church, who are still saying this is going to happen, some in our lifetime. And this sounds incredible, and I was incredulous at first myself, and I said, and I haven't mentioned what it is, and I will, but I said, Lord, if this is going to happen, this is very important, and if you want me to write a book on it, which I think you do, I need some assurance that it's you, that this is real, and that you want it. And so within the span of only 8 weeks, I met 5 people who've had this experience already of their conscience being illuminated against their will. Some were religious, some were not. Some didn't even know God when it happened. And then I learned of 5 others, and all of them ended up in the book with extraordinary, incredible stories that are true. And so what this moment is, what happened to these people already who never expected it, and what all of these people, who call them prophets throughout time, from different areas of the world, different ages, different walks of life, different backgrounds, all said the same thing and didn't know one another without having a common reference point, a common source of where they got their knowledge. So all of that's very uncanny, even for a non-believer to say, wait a minute, how did they come up with this? If not for God telling them. And so there will be a moment in time, because the conscience of the world is not awakened, because we've become so dulled in our ability to see right from wrong, to not hurt one another, to not hurt ourselves. We're going the wrong direction. And many, many people see this whether they believe in God or not. We're going the wrong way. So God, being merciful, being loving, not wanting to lose any of his children or see them hurt, is going to perform an act, a correction of conscience of the world. We'll still have free will, but he will, in a moment, show an illuminated cross with his son, Jesus, on it in his glorified state. And everything will stop. These rays will come from the wounds, the holes of his wounds onto earth, lighting it up, and pierce every soul. Every soul on earth will go through what some people have already been through, which is seeing their life in light of their sin and the consequences of those sins. And in that moment, they'll know. It'll be a knowing of who God is, in the sense of, wait, oh, that is God. The lights are coming from a man on a cross. Who's that? And they will know what sin is within themselves. It will all be revealed. There'll be no secrets. And for some who are in very, very serious sin and have been sinning for many, many years with no conscience about it, they've gotten to that point where their conscience is that dulled. It will be such a shock, such an emotional shock, that it can become a physical shock, and they may not make it through. But their death will even be a merciful event, because God will still be mercy and give them a chance. But for those who were kind of wishy-washy, they may come out of it and say, oh my gosh, I want to choose goodness. I want to choose God after this. And those who are already very holy, very saintly, will simply become more perfected in their virtues. But after this happens, people will be confused and thinking, what was that? I don't understand. And those who believe will know what it was. They'll know it was an act of God. They'll rush them into the churches. People will confess their sins. People will be forgiven. People will understand what their life is all about. But there will also be some who say that, I don't know what that was. They go back to their old ways, and they can become even worse than they were, and that they were shown everything. No one can say at that point there's no God unless they go into flat out denial. And no one can say, I didn't know that was a sin. So if people say that at that point, even after being shown everything, and say, I reject all of it, their hearts become very dark. So there'll be a polarization of the world. And all of this, by the way, is in Scripture. If you read Matthew 24, you'll see that much of this is in there already. And if people think prophecy is weird and God would never tell his people of future events, well, they haven't really read, or they just simply don't believe anything in the Bible, because there are 20 books called the prophets. Well, there's 12 minor prophets. There's Lamentations and Jeremiah and Isaiah and Baruch and Ezekiel and the major prophets as well. These are entire books. And there are about 2,500 prophecies in the Bible, about 2,000 of which have already come true, and 500 or so have yet to be revealed, or yet to happen, I should say.
Okay. Hey, Christine, I do have a question for you. And I realize, hey, sin is crouching at the door and ready to hop on us. Satan's waiting for us to make sure when we fall, he takes us in. But what do you say to people, and you may get some pushback when they hear about the Catholic Church and what's happened in part to the Catholic Church, and they immediately start to maybe reject you at that point? What can we do as Christians? As me, I've been a Catholic at some part of my life. What can we do to help people who have really been soured by this experience in the Catholic Church to maybe renew their faith? Can you, help us out, or help our listeners out, sort of maybe understand and maybe provide some advice to us as how, because a lot of people, in my opinion, are down on the Catholic Church. In talking to my godmother, she was really disheartened of, the sins of the church that came out of it, of itself. Can you give us a little insight there of how you would approach that as a Catholic?
Yes, I would say all that is true. The sins are very visible and being displayed in the church, and it's terrible. And the church is made up of human beings, and that's why. And unfortunately, this was also prophesied. God knew this would happen. If you read certain passages in the Bible, you'll see that as things enter into the it's not the end of the world, but the end of these times, when we move into things are shifting and things are getting worse, and things will they will get better. That's the promise as well. But if you focus in Catholicism on the sins of the people who go to church and the sins of the hierarchy, that is exactly, I will tell Catholics, what evil would have you do. Because evil's plan is to push people away from God, and within the Catholic Church, definitely away from the life-giving sacraments, definitely away from baptism, away from marriage, away from the Eucharist, away from all life. So if you're Catholic and you're moving and you're upset with the church, be upset with certain people in the church who've done horrible things. That's very valid. But don't be upset with what Jesus has instituted that is still there and is still phenomenally beautiful and salvific. That is our life. That is the life of our soul, which is the gospel, which is Jesus is real. He's still there. He still forgives sins. And we will all be accountable not to what someone else does, whoever they are in the church, but what we do and we believe. Exactly. So if we don't go to confession, if we don't receive the Eucharist, or if we're Protestant Christian and we're mad at our church because our pastor, a Protestant Christian doesn't like what their pastor did, so they don't go to church anymore, ultimately God isn't going to say to that person, Yeah, you're right. You should have left. That person did a terrible thing. But God's going to say, why did you leave me? Why did you abandon me? I'm still on the cross. I'm on the cross because these men and women in my church are doing these terrible things. Why didn't you hang in there with me? Why didn't you suffer with me, pray for them? And why didn't you forgive what you could? Why didn't you try? And why did you hurt yourself by leaving?
Thank you for addressing that, Christine. I wanted to get back to your book, The Warning. And, as I listened to your story about how you became a Christian, it almost sounds like that was kind of your experience. Would you say that you've already been through this experience with how you came to Christianity, or could you give us an example of one of the stories that you cover in your book so that we can understand what it looks like when someone goes through this?
Yes, I did not undergo an illumination of conscience. My conscience came alive bit by bit, I would say. I suddenly was a believer and never doubted a moment since, because that was just a gift. But I also had to learn a lot along the way. But before I describe a moment where someone did experience an actual illumination of conscience, I do want to say that I would understand if a listener thought this was all completely crazy, because I was hesitant to write about it. But I will say that I became convinced because you've got two canonized popes who are saints. You've got martyrs for the faith to whom God was shown this. You've got Saint Faustina Kowalska, a lay mystic and victim soul who suffers the stigmata in her own body, Blessed Anna Maria Taiji. You got a holy abbot, mystic, and exorcist. God told him about it, Father Michel Rodrigue. God told Elizabeth Kindleman, who started the Flame of Love movement in the church. It's bishop approved. Matthew Kelly, a modern day disciple. And all these people were saying the same thing, and even little kids were told it in different centuries. So I'm basically echoing what God has told them. None of this is coming up in Christine's mind. This is not my prophecy. This is nothing God told me. This is my research. So one of the people, his name is Rick Wendell, and he was a womanizer, and he loved his money and his ego and was steeped in a lot of different sins. And suddenly, when he was in a pilgrimage site called Medjugorje, he was there with his mom. And at that point, he had already undergone an initial conversion. So he was aware at this point, when he received his illumination of conscience, that there was a God and he should move toward him. Some people who've received it had no clue that there was a God when it happened. But for him, he knew. He's walking alongside the church, outside the church, about where the tabernacle is, and suddenly he senses God's presence behind him. He said it was God the Father holding him up in mercy, but he also started to see his life right before his eyes, one sin after another and another, and he saw all the consequences of those sins.
Now, an enchanting story. Christine, how can people buy your book, and what other social media or other places would you like our listeners to go for more information?
So the book is called The Warning, Testimonies and Prophecies of the Illumination of Conscience, and you can go to www.queenofpeacemedia.com. That's queenofpeacemedia.com. There's also a compelling video on the website about it where an exorcist speaks of this. And yes, I mean, the encounter for Rick lasted 5 minutes of earthly time, but he was a changed man after it, as everyone is who's been through it is completely changed, and now he's Father Rick Wendell. So something's happening there.
Outstanding. Thank you for coming on the program. We appreciate it. Christine Watkins, again, the founder of Queen of Peace Media and author of The Warning, Testimonies and Prophecies of the Illumination of Conscience. An enchanting story. Thank you for coming on the program.
You're welcome.
Looking for an alternative place to find news and opinion? How about conversing with fellow patriots? Join us Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for Cold War Radio. You will find it at www.spreaker.com or in the Spreaker app. Search for Cold War Radio and you will find it. Since I've been listening, I have met some terrific patriots and learned quite a lot about current events that the mainstream media will never tell you. Please come and join us. Be inspired. You will feel right at home in our Spreaker chat room.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was our spiritual segment. Interesting interview, to say the least. Unfortunately, unless a caller has some comments, I'm going to have to go back to the hard news that we're dealing with this week. It's pretty crazy. Guys, I think that and this is a hell of a gear shift, but we got to do it. We got to get back to what's going on in the country. One of the most bizarre things that I've seen, and this kind of goes back before the interview when we were talking about the military. I have never heard anything like this, and I'm going to share it with you. And this is when the Republican Council is questioning Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. This blew me away. I'd like to get your guys' opinions after the clip.
Correct. 20th. At any point during that trip, did Mr. Daniluk offer you a position of defense minister with the Ukrainian government?
He did.
And how many times did he do that?
I believe it was 3 times.
And do you have any reason why he asked you to do that?
I don't know, but every single time I dismissed it. Upon returning, I notified my chain of command and the appropriate counterintelligence folks about the offer.
I mean, Ukraine's a country that's experienced a war with Russia. Certainly their Minister of Defense is a pretty key position for the Ukrainians. President Zelensky, Mr. Daniluk, to bestow that honor on you, at least asking you. I mean, that was a big honor, correct?
I think it would be a great honor, and frankly, I'm aware of service members that have left service to help nurture the developing democracies in that part of the world, certainly in the Baltics. Former officers, and if I recall correctly, it was an Air Force officer that became Minister of Defense. But I'm an American. I came here when I was a toddler, and I immediately dismissed these offers, did not entertain them.
When he made this offer to you initially, did you leave the door open? Was there a reason that he had to come back and ask a second and third time, or was he just trying to convince you?
Counsel, you know what? It's the whole notion is rather comical that I was being asked to consider whether I'd want to be the Minister of Defense. I did not leave the door open at all.
Okay.
But it is pretty funny for a Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army, which really is not that senior, to be offered that illustrious a position.
It's a battalion commander, so if you're in a battalion, it's a high-ranking job. But if you were in a command like I was, lieutenant colonels pretty much make the coffee, But Stacy, Fort Benning, Georgia, is very close to where you are, and that's where the United States Army Ranger School is. And I was a part of that school. I was in the 1st Battalion, 29th Infantry Mechanized of the 157th Separate Infantry Brigade on Kelly Hill at Fort Benning, and our mission was to provide instructors and opposing forces for the Infantry Officers Basic and Advanced course and for the Ranger School. And actually, one of my platoons of my company did not live at Fort Benning. They lived in Dahlonega, Georgia, at the mountain camp. And I've heard reports from several Ranger candidates that were in. This guy was a Ranger, and they wanted him gone, man. They said he stole food. He was lazy. This guy, he's got to go, man. And the Army hasn't done anything yet. And I'm just, I'm really nervous about this. I am.
Yeah, he has been so unimpressive to me this entire time. He sounds like he's 12. And, you know, it's a problem when you have a foreign government trying to get, you know, a service member to become their defense minister, you know, and he seems like he has an allegiance to the Ukraine.
He does.
And he also sounds to me like someone who is consistently kind of bucking the system. He was not following the chain of command at all. And I think, and you've brought this up before, and I've heard other people bring this up too, but I don't think he's supposed to wear his uniform while he's testifying. And I think he's just done a whole host of things that, unfortunately, I don't know that anyone will do anything about it.
Well, I would respectfully disagree with the uniform part. I don't like it, but he is an active duty lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, and if you get called in front of Congress, regardless,
is that what you do?
Yeah, regardless of the uniform of the day, that you and I think it's a I think it's a commie move that he did it, and he probably shouldn't have. But really, if you look at it, that's what he is. You know, even though he didn't wear it day to day, and really, you know, the point that he didn't wear it day to day is one of the problems with this whole thing. Right. If he would have been wearing it day to day, everybody would have known he wasn't shit. Mm-hmm. You know, but he's walking around in a suit, you know, claiming that he is the man in Ukraine.
Right.
And you heard it in his testimony.
I mean, and it was just absolutely ridiculous, especially how much he felt like he needed to inflate himself.
Oh, it's sickening. And you know, there's a guy named Lieutenant Colonel, let me think of his name. Come on, Hickman. Lieutenant Colonel Hickman. You can find him on Twitter. And this guy, when Vindman was a major, was in Stuttgart or in somewhere in Germany. Kaiserslautern, I don't know where exactly he was. I forget. I knew, but I just don't have it in front of me. And this guy got complaints about Vindman that he was hanging out with the Russian officers making fun of the Americans. And some sergeant told this colonel that, and he dressed him up about it. You know, this guy's not a regular hoorah kind of guy, man. This guy's a snake. And I hope he gets nailed. I do. I just hope he gets nailed. Stacy, go ahead.
You know, I would say the last thing I would say about that, Hutch, too, is I agree. I mean, he essentially is the person who leaked the information to the whistleblower. I mean, he basically admitted that in his testimony. And I hope that there is some sort of repercussions for the man. I don't know why I feel this way today. I always go up and down with all of this, but I just get to the point where I just feel like no one's going to be held accountable. And I know they're kind of dripping out all of this FISA, and they started out with this report that was released about the FBI and how they handle human sources, and it was such just the slap on the wrist. Oh, they're not really doing it great. Here are some ideas to do it better. I mean,
there are 75 million Americans that share the same feelings that you're feeling.
Hey, Stacy, I want to correct you for a second. There is no whistleblower. Why?
That's true.
Because we've read the transcript. Sorry
That's
to correct
true.
you. There's no whistleblower. It's like little girls gossiping.
I know. It's little girls gossiping about their hurt feelings because they're not in charge anymore.
So I just want to get the record straight there. There is no whistleblower. We've all read the transcript. There is no bribery. There is no quid pro quo. There is no whatever concoction they want to come up with.
But what's gonna stop the next person from doing this? And that's where I'm at with it, Hutch.
I agree. No,
I when I read, and I didn't even finish reading the article about the handling of the human sources by the FBI. I'm like, it's just BS. It's
I'm
like
the same way. I don't even want to read it.
You guys didn't do really that great, so do better. And here's a couple ideas. Case closed.
And you know what should happen? We all know what should happen, and we all know it's not going to happen. There should be at least 20 Americans that get hanged by the neck until dead. in front of all of us because of this. That is the severity of what these communists have done.
And then maybe the next round of deep staters and Vindmans and Sondlands and all these jackasses that testified, and the Schiffs and the DNC operatives and the Orrs and all, then maybe they'll stand down and do their job with just to follow.
And the Stetlers, and all these people. I can't even think of their names. The media.
The media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they should
with
hang
the circular
right alongside.
reporting BS. Yes, no, I'm with you because this entire Ukraine BS is continuing because of the mainstream media.
Exactly. And remember where it started.
Reason.
Where it started was Russia. And now we're all in Ukraine. And all of these ambassadors and all of these high-paid employees that we have dispersed all over the world are all like Sergeant Schultz. I know nothing. You're in charge of Ukraine. For me, you are representing me and America in another country, and you're telling me that you spend every day of your working life in Ukraine, and you didn't know that Biden was playing that. Come on, man.
Yeah.
This is espionage.
Yeah.
Willfully spreading false news.
It's sedition,
of the
too.
American Army, Navy, with an intent to disrupt its operations.
And I feel like if something major doesn't occur for these people who did this, and obviously they're not going to hang. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. But
but it should.
Some high-ranking people need to spend a hell of a lot of time behind bars.
No
Otherwise, this is it. Nothing is going to change. I mean, I do have faith in Bill Barr. I do. I mean, I think that he's trying to do something about this. But I just get when I read those little slap on the wrist reports, it just makes me go, you know what? Yep. It's just nothing's going to change.
Me too. And I'll tell you, you talked about the wording, the whistleblower. You guys talked about the whistleblower. Mm-hmm. Stacy, when you first met me on talk radio, I don't know if you remember, but my initial theory, or not theory, my analysis of where we are is and how to fix it is that we have to get control of the language back.
The language, right?
Yeah. Words are so important. And this is a perfect example. When Brett Baer sits up there and says whistleblower, I want to shoot him with a BB gun. Mm-hmm. Just to stun him. Come on, man. When you're reporting on this testimony and you don't mention the fact that Republicans are not allowed to call witnesses, you suck, Brett.
Yeah, no doubt at all. They're not allowed to prepare, essentially, to even cross-examine these people.
Right.
I mean, it's been the most unfair process, and to cover it like it is a real impeachment is it's disgusting, and it's sad to see it happen on Fox News. But I'll have to tell you guys, other than Tucker Carlson, I never turn that channel on. Never. I don't watch it. I don't watch any of the networks. I try to stay as far away from it as I can because it is just such complete BS. And right now it's designed as a complete psyop because all they're trying to do is to try and get Trump voters separated from Trump in any way, shape, or form, or to get us down to think that we're the only people left supporting this jackhole, and that's what it's all about right now. So I'm trying to stay away from it as much as I possibly can. But I do, before I have to go, guys, I do want to encourage you guys, if you have not seen Glenn Beck's show on Hydra, it's about I want to say maybe an hour and a half show that he did. The reason I bring it up is you guys were talking about the ambassadors, and it really goes into Soros and how Soros and our government are funding these social media campaigns, basically to get these quote-unquote spontaneous uprisings to begin. Because what they're trying to do is essentially have coups without having to go in militarily. Wow. So they create this uprising against whatever. Sometimes people don't even know what they're upset about. A leader steps down or is taken out, and then Soros and his accolades have put in so much money to the situation that they actually are the people kind of wielding the power and authority within these countries. And he goes through, different places where this has already occurred. And so when I think about the Ukraine and what's going on there, I feel like this is very much tied to it, because they were you'll see a portion about the Ukraine on his show, speaking about how they were trying to essentially take out the current government, and the current government reached out to the Soros organization and said, "Hey, come talk to us. We'll try and work with you." And they would have none of it. They started the spontaneous uprising, and the dominoes began to fall. And our government is actually contributing money to these NGOs in all of these countries to kind of start this stuff. Glenn Beck is he can get on your very last nerves, but he is a good researcher.
Lately he's been good, and we squeezed an extra 8 minutes out of you. You ought to think about coming around for the whole. You're on fire the second hour. But anyway, how can people get in touch with you, Stacy? And thanks for coming.
Oh, yeah. You guys can most easily reach me on Twitter, DiscoveringMe40. And I'm sorry I have to run this evening, but I will be back next Wednesday. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the week.
You too, Stacy.
Can't wait,
right,
Stacy.
thanks.
Thank you. Let's go to Eugene,
Bye-bye.
Oregon. Marlene, what's on your mind?
Oh, goodness.
Go ahead, you're up.
Goodness. I'm okay. I was just thinking, if this Vindman guy has such an allegiance to Ukraine, what's he doing here? He ought to defect and go live there if he's so gung-ho about the Ukraine.
I think you'll end up seeing him in Ukraine after his army career is over, which better happen soon.
That could very well be. This is logical, you think? I think.
I hope so, man. I mean, it's something,
Me too.
It's a big problem, and it's another problem I knew it was there, but I never thought that flag officers would come out against the president like they did with Gallagher. And I misquoted his name as Garrett, but it's Gallagher. Ralph.
I saw the article about Gallagher, and I'm glad Trump did what he did.
Well, this has been going on. This has been going on for a while, and I got to tell you, one of the heroes for these military guys that have been persecuted is Michael Savage. Dr. Savage has been on this for years. I mean, like a lot of years. So it's good that these guys are released or got their rank back or whatever. But did you watch any of the hearings?
I really haven't. I'm still working, so I don't have a lot of time to watch them unless I catch the rest on the weekend.
Nobody watches it. I mean, but I will say, Sal, something that really flipped me out. I go down to my local pizza shop last night for a Sicilian with pepperoni.
Okay.
And the hearings were on the TV in the pizza shop. That blew me away.
Get out of here. But
that blew me away.
No.
It just blew me away totally.
Too funny.
I don't know whether I should bring up my food question for Marlene or not. I'm holding it in my pocket.
Go for it.
Does it involve?
I was expecting it.
Go ahead. What do you think? Take a guess, Hutch. Go ahead. You got it.
I know what it is. All right. Does it involve? No. This is a married woman now, so
no. No.
We're not talking about the hair twirling.
No, absolutely not. No, sir.
Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, one day, I'm going to let me tell you a little bit about Sal. All right, I had a show from 2006. I don't know till about 2010, I think, and it was called Bird's Eye View, and it was not a serious show. It was I don't want to say comedy, but it kind of was.
I thought it was comedy.
Oh, you listened to it?
No, but you've talked about it, and it sounded to me like it was more comedy with maybe a little politics thrown in.
It was.
Sort of
Sal was my correspondent on the ground in a very busy Pittsburgh neighborhood, and he talked to people on the street. And I'm going to get those clips, Sal, and I'm going to clean them up. so identity is protected and things like that. But those were some funny interviews.
They were fun. Yeah, they were fun, and it was a good time. And I'm glad that I did that. No regrets on that one.
Your question for Marlene.
Marlene, did you like pierogies?
Yes. Duh.
Oh my. Okay. Did you hear what's going on here in Pittsburgh?
No.
There's a job opening.
Oh, really? For a pierogi maker?
No.
Oh,
no. Even better. Even better. Our hometown Pittsburgh Pirates are looking for a pierogi for the pierogi run during the game.
Oh, I see.
No, we do. We have
call them pierogies.
I
call them petishkis, but it's pretty close. They're pretty close to the same thing.
So you're Russian or Ukrainian?
Actually, I'm Ukrainian, Hutch. My real mother, God bless her, who's up with the Lord now, she was Ukrainian. Her parents came here from Kiev, one of the little villages in Kiev, and then they settled in.
No, haven't we learned yet that it's Kiev?
I guess so. It probably
it's
is.
Not. It's Kiev to me.
Y, K-Y.
I know. Go ahead.
But anyway, I get that Ukrainian heritage from my mom and all my aunts and uncles on her side of the family. And so when I was younger, and I still make some of these things, I do cook. That's why I make the borscht, and I don't make the vreniki.
What about halupkis?
Halushki.
Oh, I love that stuff. I haven't made it in ages.
Two different things. Halushki and halupkis.
Yeah.
Yes.
Halupkis
are pronounced a little different, but I love them. I love those things.
I do too, man.
But if you're looking for a job and you like pierogies, it could be a match made in heaven, Marlene.
You got to run. You got to run a lap.
It has all that.
You got to run.
I had tons of money to move to Pittsburgh.
You don't want to move You don't want to move into Pittsburgh.
I've heard. I wouldn't. No, I can't see that. It's like you don't want to move into Portland. Actually, Eugene isn't bad though. We're a commie city, but we're not as bad as Portland.
Right.
But we're getting there.
You got a lot of homeless, but anyway.
Yeah, we do.
Your final comments. I got a lot of stuff I got to cover yet.
Oh, I know you do. I guess in closing, I'll just say that lady was interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I agree with some of her stuff.
Right.
It's just that I'm not saying she's right, wrong, whatever. I'll just say that I'm a little skeptical. I'll just put it that way. But it was interesting.
It was. It definitely was.
Yeah.
So thanks for calling, Marlene. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Marlene.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Marlene from Eugene, Oregon, one of our favorite and recurring callers. Always love to hear that. Let's get into Fox News Channel and Chris Wallace. Wow, he's really gone downhill. He listened to the Sondland testimony, and then he decided that it was pretty much a home run.
Much more than the European countries are doing, and they should be helping more than they are. Germany does almost nothing for you. All they do is talk, and I think it's something you should really ask them about. It continues. Zelensky agrees with the point that Trump makes during that transcript. Ukraine has a long-standing issue with the corruption. The president wanted the new president to root that out. At the base of this, the president wanted to figure out what was happening in the election of 2016. He's convinced that Ukraine had a role in that, as evidence from the transcript itself. Burisma was a part of that corruption, and Hunter Biden was a part of Burisma. Then we ask the question, is this ultimately a crime, and is this impeachable? To Chris Wallace now in Washington on that. Chris.
Well, I think that, as Brett mentioned, I think that what Gordon Sondland was trying to do here was protect himself more than he is to protect anybody else. to a certain degree, took out the bus and he ran over President Trump, Vice President Pence, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Rudy Giuliani, Mick Mulvaney. He implicates all of them. And one of the things he's at pains to say is this wasn't a rogue operation. I wasn't a freelancer. Everybody knew. Everybody was in the loop on this. I think one of the keys is going to be going to the specific points of contact between him and the president, because there are a couple of points where he says it was abundantly clear, my personal presumption, my belief, and he's not saying directly that the president told him these things. And specifically, he says the president never told me that there was any condition between aid, as opposed to the White House meeting, between military aid and Zelensky announcing the investigations. However, they did go through, and in fact, to a certain degree, Sondland just offered it, his involvement with the president. May 23rd, his first meeting with the president. This is from his opening statement. The president was skeptical about Ukraine. He even mentioned that Ukraine tried to take him down in the last election, and he directed us to talk with Rudy. That we took that as the express direction of the president to deal with Rudy Giuliani. July 25th, he has an exchange with Gordon Volker, one of the other diplomats involved in all this, in which he says before the phone call with Zelensky, he apparently says that assuming President Zelensky convinces Trump he will investigate, get to the bottom of what happened in 2016, we will nail down a date for the meeting. And there are more contacts. So he certainly makes it clear that in the direct conversations he has with the president, he saw a conditionality here, and he very much saw Rudy Giuliani as a personal agent and the person that the president was directing them to talk to. On the specific issue of aid, he says, and he was quite insistent on this, I was never told by the president that aid was conditioned on this, but I added up 2 and 2 and got to 4. I suspect that the Republicans are going to challenge his math skills.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed from watching all this is that it almost looks like a hearing that is uncovering that the only malfeasance that occurred, and maybe it didn't even occur, Sal, but it looks to me like they're trying to push this off on Giuliani.
Yeah, they're throwing him under the bus, but going back to the interview, the person who was conducting the interview, wow, where are his pom poms at? He's got his pom poms out. Let's go, Adam Schiff. Yeah, I'm making your case for you. Yes,
isn't it sickening? I mean,
it is horrible. The guy is, I don't know where he's. Well,
look at the names. Look at the names he threw out there. He threw Trump, Pence, Pompeo, Bolton, Giuliani, and Mulvaney under the bus.
Well, there's been others in our world that are saying, and I'm going to give some kudos to Michael Savage on this, is that this is Pelosi's grand scheme.
Absolutely.
Total decapitation of both Trump and Pence. So guess who can become president?
Right. That's absolutely right.
Isn't that what mob bosses do?
It does. And listen to the response. White House denies Pence-Sondland conversation ever occurred. So Pence is standing strong and saying, no, this is BS. Fox News is so unprofessional. I'm sad to say that. I am, because what else do we have except for OAN? One American News Network, ladies and gentlemen, go there. I'm telling you, it will be worth your while because Fox News is melting down. I mean, and it's a shame. It really is. I mean, they had such a business model that was so good. You had opinion news. You had, Shepard Smith carried the gay agenda, and then you had other ones that carried a conservative agenda. And then you had the real news at 6 o'clock with Special Report with Brett Baer. And once you tarnish that, the rest of the network's unbearable. Ken from King George, your thoughts?
Hey, what's going on, Hutch? Well, isn't Vindman, isn't he in violation of the UCMJ?
I would say so in many areas, but I'm not a Lindsey Graham. I'm not a military lawyer.
Tell the audience what UCM. Tell us what that acronym is.
Uniform Code of Military Justice. Yeah. So not only if you join the military and you raise your right hand, and I do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me.
Nice job.
It's been a while.
I probably couldn't have done that, but and the thing is, and this, that applies to everyone in the military. But when you are an officer, it's one thing. But then when you become a field grade officer, and when I say field grade, if you look at the headgear of military officers from all 4 branches, 5 if you count the Coast Guard, once you reach 04, once you reach 04, you become a field grade military officer, signified by the scrambled eggs on the visor of your cover, of your hat. And once you become a field grade officer, you are even more bound by the apolitical character of your office, right?
Exactly.
You're not allowed to talk politics when you're a colonel, man. You just don't do it.
Well, at least not in public, anyway.
Right.
If you're having a couple beers with a couple buddies, out at the bar, that's one thing. But
as long as nobody has a camera.
Oh.
You know what I mean? And to what Stacy was saying, no, go ahead. Let me formulate that a little better. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I mean, you were on a roll there.
I lost my train of thought. I was trying to. I was trying to, say that once you hit that kind of rank. Go ahead.
This guy doesn't dictate foreign policy with any country, let alone Ukraine. The president does that.
Exactly.
That's the president's job. And if he says, okay, this is my policy for, you will obey that lawful order. And, if you feel that's unlawful, then you can still challenge that. But, yeah, these idiots that are in there now,
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, Ken. You got 2 choices. You can vote against who's the president, or guess what? You can run, if you're qualified, you can run for president yourself. And then you can be the one who calls the shots.
There you go.
Otherwise, you got to follow orders, as long as they're not illegal or wrong. And I don't know why Ukraine became so, the greatest country on this whole planet.
I know, right? Well, and the thing is, think about why the president was interested in Ukraine. And this is why Fox News sucks. Because the story ought to be the reason he was interested in Ukraine, and it's in the transcripts. It's in the transcript. There is only one entity that said that the DNC server was hacked by the Russians. Only one. And it's CrowdStrike. And CrowdStrike originated in Ukraine and is owned by an anti-Putin guy. And they are the only source that says that Seth Rich didn't give up the DNC emails. It was Russia. Seth Rich now sleeps with the fishes. And nobody's talking about this. This is the biggest part of this story that's not being told. Is that the Russians
that was the robbery that wasn't a robbery that went bad.
It never happened. The Russians never hacked the DNC server. That's BS. and CrowdStrike and an investigation into Ukrainian oligarchs, which, by the way, the guy was indicted tonight and he's on the lam. Nobody knows where he is now. Don't forget that. That's today news. That happened today. Ukrainian members of parliament came out and they asked for the president of Ukraine and the president of the United States to investigate how Hunter Biden got paid $16.7 million of laundered, stolen cash. And the CEO of CrowdStrike is now gone. Nobody knows where he is.
Well, this whole thing stinks to high heaven.
It does.
And, and nobody's willing to look into it, except for us normal people.
That's right.
Hey, we want answers, but everybody, it's get under the rug, but orange man bad,
All right, Ken, now today you had this, and I swear this guy, if he was in a real court, if this was a real court, he'd be in trouble for changing his testimony so many times. But this ambassador, a really rich guy, a hotel mogul that made a donation to the Trump inauguration to get his post as ambassador to Ukraine. He was the ambassador to EU, I think. Anyway, one of them. He was the ambassador somewhere, but he bought a ticket. That's how he got there. But he's out there.
Sondland or whatever the heck his name is.
Yeah, Sondland.
All right, hey, go ahead. Sorry.
And you had Representative Turner. Never heard of this guy before the last couple days. This guy is now my hero. I'm going to play this clip, and I want you to tell me why we're still doing this impeachment kangaroo Fox News court.
After you testified, Chairman Schiff ran out and gave a press conference and said he gets to impeach the President of the United States because of your testimony. And if you pull up CNN today, right now, their banner says Sondland ties Trump to withholding aid. Is that your testimony today, Ambassador Sondland, that you have evidence that Donald Trump tied the investigations to the aid? Because I don't think you're saying that.
I've said repeatedly, Congressman, I was presuming. I also said that President Trump...
So no one told you, not just the President. Giuliani didn't tell you. Mulvaney didn't tell you. Nobody, Pompeo didn't tell you. Nobody else on this planet
listening, Chris Wallace?
told you that Donald Trump was tying aid to these investigations. Is that correct?
I think I already testified.
No, answer the question. Is it correct? No one on this planet told you that Donald Trump was tying this aid to the investigations? Because if your answer is yes, then the chairman's wrong and the headline on CNN is wrong. No one on this planet told you that President Trump was tying aid to investigations. Yes or no?
Yes.
So, you really have no testimony today that ties President Trump to a scheme to withhold aid from Ukraine in exchange for these investigations.
Other than my own presumption.
Which is nothing. I mean, that's what I don't understand. So you know what hearsay evidence is, Ambassador? Hearsay is when I testify what someone else told me. Do you know what made-up testimony is? Made-up testimony is when I just presume it. I mean, you're just assuming all of these things, and then you're giving them the evidence that they're running out and doing press conferences, and CNN's headline is saying that you're saying the President of the United States should be impeached because he tied aid to investigations, and you don't know that, correct?
I never said the President of the United States should be impeached.
Nope, but you did. You have left people with the confusing impression that you were giving testimony that you did not. You do not have any evidence that the President of the United States was tied to withholding aid from Ukraine in exchange for investigations. I yield back.
Bell ripped a double to the notch. And this one soars out of here. Wow! It leaves the ballpark on the fly. Hello, Allegheny. Josh Bell with the homer. One of the loudest home runs you'll ever see.
That's what you call getting out.
So, Ken, shouldn't it be over? Shouldn't it be a done deal?
You'd think, but yeah, we're going to drag this out another 2 weeks because they don't have anything.
Nothing at all.
But all they're going to do is try to smear the president because He's up for re-election next year, and this is all this BS is about, is to smear his name so that people won't vote for him.
And I'll say it again. If we had a legitimate media, this would have never been able to happen.
Oh, we would hear that clip that you just played on all the news stations.
Yep.
But instead, we hear the clips that are just flat out not accurate of the picture.
It's nauseating. It really is. And the only, in my opinion, and I would ask the listeners to reflect on the intro today, where the president told you, never give up. We're right. We are right on all these things. The Democrats, the corporate media, the corporations, boy, we've got a lot of people arrayed against us, Ken.
I know.
But we have to keep fighting. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ken.
Hey, one real quick thing.
Okay.
There's a I can't remember he's the mayor, but out in Appomattox, I'm going to probably butcher this name, Appomattox County out here in Virginia.
Appomattox. Yeah.
They're like they're one of 4 counties now that they've basically come out and said, yeah, we're a sanctuary for the Second Amendment.
Yeah, Civil War, man. Civil War is brewing. It's scary, man.
To send a message to Richmond that, yeah, you people want to mess with this crap, you know.
They're gonna. It's gonna come down at some point where people are gonna have to make a decision, a scary decision, but an important one, and something that will mold our country for generations to come. Thanks for calling, Ken. I appreciate it. Always do. Ken from King George, Virginia, ladies and gentlemen, keeps us up to date with what's going on in that region. Let me get in, and this always happens, man. I got less than a half an hour, and I got to try to put all this news in there, but I'm going to try it. Something that did not get reported, the Clinton Foundation, Sal, that was flush with cash a couple years ago, is now in a situation where donations are plunging, reaching a 16-year low. I mean, they lost $30 million since the election. Nobody's donating anymore.
They didn't lose it.
I mean, they're not donating anymore. I'm sure they didn't lose what they have, but it's telling. You know, it was pay for play all day long. Nobody gives a damn. Fox, you don't hear Brett Baer talking about it. You know, Mike Wallace doesn't care, but that's the way it is. Now, the Institute, and I'm saying these things because this is what you're getting ripped off of. These are the things you should be hearing from at least 6 to 7 o'clock Eastern Time on Fox News on Special Report with Brett Baer. The Institute for Economics and Peace, the IEP, in Sydney, Australia, on Wednesday published the 2019 edition of its Global Terrorism Index. The survey of terrorist incidents over the past year found that the Taliban has surpassed the Islamic State as the world's deadliest terrorist group. The Islamic State, ISIS, was seen as the deadliest threat in every edition of this report since 2013. The rise of the Taliban and fall of ISIS in the 2019 report, which uses data from the calendar year 2018, were almost perfectly symmetrical. The Taliban racked up 70% more murders to reach 6,103, while the Islamic State killed 70% fewer people and sank to 1,328 kills. The Taliban is now responsible for about 38% of all terrorism-related deaths around the globe. So the president has virtually neutered ISIS, and there's no news on that, Sal.
But
not a word.
Yeah, but however, as one goes down, the other one's going to come back up.
That's true.
And
it is a whack-a-mole.
It's a relentless battle that, unfortunately, I don't want to say we have to go war over, but we have to be very careful and keep our defenses up, because just like the devil or Satan is waiting for us, I would make the argument that these people don't want us to exist on this earth either.
Not at all.
And
Coexist.
They'll do everything in their means to eliminate us.
Coexist is the biggest fraud that ever reached us. Nancy Pelosi, I'll tell you what, Nancy Pelosi is a mafia girl, man. I'm telling you, man. The D'Alessandro family is prominent in Baltimore, where she came from, where her father and her brother were former mayors. She refuses to embrace 2020 Democrats' gun control agenda, including confiscation. Can you imagine at the end of this fiasco? And I don't know what the end is. The end might be the election in 2020. But Nancy Pelosi is going to go headhunting after this is over. You got to remember, she never wanted to go down this stupid impeachment road. The communists drug her down there.
Yeah, but that's why she put Adam Schiff up to the task and not her, because that's her mouthpiece.
Well, it wasn't her. It was supposed to be Jerry Nadler.
Well, I think they did some focus groups on him.
Of course,
and they found out how unappealing he was.
Especially if you've seen him before recently. If you saw him 10 years ago or 15 years ago when he was 400 pounds.
Yeah, he looked like he liked to eat like I used to.
Gerald Giles Nadler.
Yeah, so it looks like he downed a few hot dogs in New York, that's for sure. But they picked the most appealing, smoothest lawyer that they could find. And yes, she's keeping her hands clean, Hutch. Her hands are very clean, and it's not. If this fails, it's not going to be her fault, because
right.
she's already made the case that they really shouldn't go forward.
Now, some other news: an illegal alien arrested in deadly Oregon crash fled to Mexico after the Oregon jail did not honor ICE hold request. My advice to anybody that is personally caught up in anything like this, I would find the most direct local politician involved in that decision, and I would sell my house and pay a lawyer to sue them. This is how we win these things. These little half-ass mayors, like ours in Pittsburgh, Mayor Peduto, he's a nothing burger. He doesn't have shit. I'm going to tell you, if I was anywhere connected to anything involved in that Syrian quote-unquote refugee that tried to bomb that church up on the hill, or anything else, that there was any malfeasance with an Islamist in this city because of that doofus, I would try to murder him. Figuratively. I would try to make him go broke. I mean it, man. This is how you do. This is how you stop these people.
Well, unfortunately, they have a big backer, and it's almost an endless source of money. And
I'd still do it.
Yeah, but they might have a bigger pocketbook, but it shouldn't stop you from challenging the people who are bringing this type of unrest to the citizens who don't deserve it. They don't deserve people who they're just trying to go to church. They're not trying to do anything else. They're just trying to go to church, whether you agree with them or not. Whether they're brothers and sisters of God, they just want to go to church. They don't want to deal with some deranged terrorists.
No, that's true. Now, human rights. This is the story that should be told at 6:00 Eastern. But Brett Baer and Fox News have decided that it's not important. You don't need to know this, so they kept playing the kangaroo court instead of reporting real news. Human rights watchdog Amnesty International said Iranian security forces have killed at least 106 protesters doing ongoing unrest over a fuel price hike. But the real death toll could be much higher, and I would add to that headline, the fuel price hike's only part of it. These people want out from underneath the thumb of these Khomeiniite imams that have controlled their life since 1979. I mean, this is a really big deal. Iran has mobilized 500,000 paramilitary fighters to suppress protests. Iran on Tuesday claimed calm has been restored in the country following protests triggered by a massive hike in gasoline prices, but the internet remained down, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced it was mobilizing 500,000 members of a brutal paramilitary force known as the Basij to control the streets. This is the second time. We had the Green Revolution during the Obama administration that, well, obviously, you know, Valerie Jarrett. They make so much ado about Rudy Giuliani, but what was Valerie Jarrett? Valerie Jarrett was running the country. Obama wasn't. He's not smart enough. And she was born in Iran. John Kerry, his daughter, is married to an Iranian. This is so obvious, but it continues to go on.
Well, that's a very dangerous country. We have to keep our eye on that situation. I hope that they don't become a nuclear power. I think it'd be very dangerous in the Middle East. We've discussed in the past, and your beliefs that they may actually intend to use a nuclear weapon.
Oh, no may involved. They will. There's no may. The whole concept of the 12th Imam, and I tried to get Omar Kudret to come correct with that. He fell a little short.
Well, I'm hoping that, it would be my hope that it would be never used. Hopefully we don't see the use of those types of weapons.
If it's developed in Iran with the current government, it will be used 5 minutes after it's finished. And I say that because of my knowledge of the 12th Imam that Omar Kudrat knew too, but he didn't stand behind it, maybe as strongly as he should have. What they believe is that the world must catch on fire before their dreams are manifested. It must. It has to catch fire first. And they're going to start the fire. That's just ideology as written. I mean, that's the 12th Imam. Now, I want to go to something that puts out a little bit of hope. And Sal, I would ask you, you spent most of your time in this region. Were you ever a Democrat?
Never.
Okay, I was. And almost everybody I knew was. My whole family was and still is Democrats. But we were all, most of us, patriotic Americans and believed in the Second Amendment and things like that lately. And I would say the tipping point was probably when they threw Joe Lieberman under the bus. When they threw him overboard, you pretty much had a capitulation of American patriots in the Democrat Party, and they gave it away to the communists. And I always wondered, well, I know there was a lot of people, that I grew up with back in the day that were gun enthusiasts, hunters, believed in the Constitution, loved the country. There's a candidate in Georgia, a Democrat candidate, that's running for president. This is going to blow your mind. And let me just preface this, that behind him, the Daily Caller, which is where this came from, doesn't really know that much about guns. They're from D.C., and they talk a lot of smack, but they don't know anything about guns. So they called an AR-15 that was really tricked up. I mean, it had a bipod on it. You know, it had some rail optic devices on the Picatinny rail on the upper receiver. They had the shortened buttstock of the M4, and it had a flash suppressor on the end. And they erroneously call this a high-powered rifle, which it's not a high-powered rifle. The 5.56 millimeter cartridge is about as big around as a .22, and it's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. You want to talk about a high-powered rifle?
I got a couple.
Go to the 308 or the 30-06.
Yeah, I got a couple of those right about 5 feet away from me. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Good job. So let's listen to this Georgia Democrat who is standing in front of one of these rifles, and I just said that because of what he's going to say. Here we go.
My name is Hal Schaus, and I'm running for U.S. Senate in Georgia as a Democrat. The truth is, taking this from me isn't going to stop a violent criminal or a terrorist from killing my family or yours. It's not going to stop gay people or cops or our veterans from committing suicide.
All right, I'm Anders Hagstrom here with the Daily Caller, and with me is Hal Schaus, who is a Democrat running in Georgia for Senate. Hal, you released a pretty interesting ad campaign. As running as a Democrat in Georgia, you did your ad in front of a high-powered rifle that a lot of Democrats on the national stage have been wanting to ban. So could you tell us a little bit about what your campaign, why you're running, and a little about yourself?
Well, basically, I'm running because I'm sick of the lies from the media and the Democratic Party vilifying gun owners and an inanimate object while they ignore the real problems. The fact is, we have plenty of gun legislation on the books already. We're just not enforcing the laws. 2017, there were over 112,000 prohibited possessors who went to gun stores and tried to buy a gun. The background checks worked. They did the first part of the job. They denied them. The second thing that they did was commit a felony in doing so. Guess how many were prosecuted out of that 112,000? Nationwide. If you guessed 12, you're right. 12 out of 112,000. And what they want to do now is add a new background check, the universal background check, which is really nothing more than universal gun registration. And the fact that we're not getting the most out of the background checks that we have, that's why our citizens are dying. The last couple of shootings that we've had are glorious failures of the background checks. You go back to the, say, February 2018 in Aurora, Illinois. A prohibited possessor, a felon, who stabbed his girlfriend, did 3 years, went and tried to buy a Glock 40. The background checks worked. He got denied. But because our law enforcement agencies do not communicate with each other, he went down the road to another county, applied for a concealed weapon permit, and got it, right? Goes and buys a Glock 40 now, legally-ish, right? They find out a year later that they screwed up, the police department that issued the concealed permit. And because the man didn't have a pot plant at his house, helicopters were not deployed. They did not send a SWAT team to recover that gun. They sent a letter, which he promptly ignored. Then he went to work and killed 5 of his workmates. And then he ambushed those very police that screwed up on their job and didn't go collect that gun. He wounded critically 5 first responders, right? And of course, the left-wing media blames the gun, and the Republicans are feckless pussies, and they don't say what I'm saying, so they allow that narrative to continue.
Oh, I snorted. Yes, I did. I mean, that's amazing, man. I mean, he called the Republicans out. You know, that background check thing he's talking about, that's Pat Toomey, man. That's Pat Toomey and Senator Manchin. These people are idiots.
Well, you know, and also the point that that everyone needs to hear is these laws already exist. They need to be enforced. Not only enforced, but the punishments need to have some teeth.
No, I agree. You
commit the crimes.
That's a Democrat, though. That's a Democrat from Georgia. These are the people that I know exist that should come out there. You know them, Sal. They're all around us. They're all around us. They believe in everything.
They're not bad people.
No, they agree in almost everything we believe in. You know, all right, I got to change gears. I got like 9 minutes left. I want to get through this. And this is an article called The Menace of the LGBTQ Bigots. And that's what they are, folks. And we better start standing up against these freaking freaks. Chick-fil-A caves to cancel culture jihad. Chick-fil-A has stopped donations to several Christian organizations after receiving backlash from gay rights activists over the last several weeks. Mayreed McCardle of National Review reports the popular restaurant chain will no longer donate to the Salvation Army, the Paul Anderson Youth Home, and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. In its report, NBC News called these groups controversial. The Salvation Army, controversial. And the donations, controversial funds. That might come as a surprise to many Chick-fil-A patrons. The Salvation Army dates back from 1865, Civil War, ladies and gentlemen, and works in 130 countries dedicated to doing the most good and meeting human need without discrimination. The Fellowship of Christian Athletes, launched in 1954, works in 84 countries, engaging, equipping, and empowering coaches and athletes to united inspire and change the world through the gospel. The Paul Anderson Youth Home, named after the record-setting Olympic weightlifter, strives to provide a Christ-centered, holistic, and therapeutic approach toward transforming the lives of young men aged 16 to 21. In the founding document of these Christian groups, the Bible, marriage is between a man and a woman. This support for traditional marriage is the source of hostility from LGBTQEIEIO groups. According to the National LGBTQEIEO Task Force, the Chick-fil-A controversy stems from the millions of dollars the fast food chain has donated to anti-gay hate groups over the years, and to President Dan Cathy's hostile remarks against marriage equity. Drew Anderson of GLAAD, an LGBTQEIEIO advocacy group, told NBC that Chick-fil-A investors, employees, and customers can greet today's announcement with cautious optimism, but should remember that similar press statements were previously proven to be empty. All right, I want to go down here. In the Quran, the holy book of Islam, marriage is between a man and a woman, or a man and several women. The concept of homosexual marriage is unknown in Islam, but LGBTQ advocacy groups have not attempted to defund the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, or the Muslim Students Association, dedicated to establishing Islamic societies on college campuses in Canada and the United States. Despite their open bigotry toward Christians, homosexual groups routinely get special treatment in American culture. And if you go down through this, you look at some of the things. In Robert Townsend's 1987 Hollywood Shuffle, the phone rings in the office of a private investigator. I thought it might be my lady, he says, but it was just some fag. The 1974 Blazing Saddles features the French Mistake dance number, during which choreographer Buddy Bazaar, Dom DeLuise, tells the performers to watch me, faggots. Blazing Saddles was co-written by the great Richard Pryor. Fans might wonder how Pryor would handle the scene suggested by President Trump, in which President Pete Buttigieg attempts to deal with Xi Jinping of China. Pryor, Don Rickles, and George Carlin might also have some fun with pink pussy hats and such. These entertainers had no use for the kind of favoritism now cropping up in politics. As Evan Garr notes in the California Globe, California Secretary of State Alex Padilla has announced a partnership with an LGBTEIEIO group claiming itself Equality California to train poll workers on how best to interact with transgendered voters. Padilla touts a welcoming environment for voters whose gender identity, expression, or pronouns do not appear to match their name on the voter rolls. As Gar explains, when asked their name, a transtestical man or woman could give something different than what is on the rolls or the ID forms he or she has. Millions of illegals protected by state sanctuary laws already use different names and fake identification to vote, but Padilla, who refuses to cooperate with probes of voter fraud, is always looking for more. Meanwhile, as Fox News reported, in 2020, the Chick-fil-A Foundation will deepen its giving to a smaller number of organizations working exclusively in the areas of education, homelessness, and hunger. Chick-fil-A has caved to the LGBTQEIEIO cancel culture jihad certain amount of surge in 2020 and beyond. Just had to throw that out there, Sal.
Yeah, well, they caved in to a special interest group, and that's their choice. It's a business of what they can do. Unfortunately, they made a choice. They have to live with it. It's their business. If they want to ruin it that way, or they think it's a good move, it's their choice to do what they want to with their money. They're clearly, though, sending a message that they felt threatened. Why they felt threatened and not held to their principles, I don't know.
They get beat up every day. They're probably tired of paying their lawyers. That's probably. They're trying to sell chicken. They don't have trillions of dollars, and they have to continuously fight off these people. Let me leave you with something. The leftists are destroying everything they touch. Sal, I grew up and my favorite comedian was Richard Pryor. And there were some others, and they were outrageous. They were beautiful. But we used to be able to make fun of each other and laugh. If you've ever seen a roast, and I'm talking about 1970s, I'm talking about a roast where Don Rickles would get up there or whoever, Richard Pryor, and they would mock everybody at the roast panel. And they would mock them for being Jewish, for being white, for being gay, for being black, for being Muslim, everything. Nothing was off limits. Sal, you remember this. This was back when comedy was funny, and we laughed at ourselves.
Right, and they weren't making it. It was comedy. It was not some attack on them. And honestly, for myself, I could care less what you do behind closed doors.
Me too.
If you want to, play dress up or do whatever you want to do, and that's what you seek, that's fine. That's up to you. But I don't need to comply with it.
Right. And you made a statement to me when I brought you on the show, and because you're a professional, and and God bless you, man. I don't want to get any slander toward you or anything. And you said a couple certain things, and I said fine. But one thing I did say was, look, man, if the shit's funny, I'm gonna make fun of it.
Absolutely. A lot of people are all sensitive and get all their panties in a ruffle about somebody who's just simply trying to have a good conversation and be funny, and it's just gone way beyond that. And the word police are out, and the feeling police are out, and oh my gosh, it's gone haywire. It's a world that's gone crazy.
It has. And I'm looking in the chat room, and they're talking about the Dean Martin roast, and those are the ones I'm talking about. I would encourage anybody.
Oh man,
go on YouTube.
What about Sammy Davis Jr.? Wow,
man. Yeah, go on YouTube and look at some of those things, and look at the things that we naturally and easily laughed at throughout our whole lives. And now we've got these kids coming up that don't know how to change the oil in their car. They couldn't cook themselves a sandwich, a grilled cheese. And they're out here, they're scared of this and scared of that. It's absolutely sickening. I asked a question on Twitter today. I was feeling a little snarky, and I saw an article about Pete Buttigieg, and I just asked on Twitter. I was just curious, man. I was like, hey, is Buttigieg the husband or the wife? Because I just didn't know, you know. And people got back to me, oh, he's a catcher, he's this, he's that. And I'm like, I didn't really care, man. But now that you brought it up, so what's he going to be the first woman president? Or I guess, I don't know, maybe not. I don't know what's going on there. But I do know we're out of time. And with that, Sal, another magnificent performance. How can people get in touch with you and final comments?
Thanks, Hutch. It was really good talking tonight. And Stacy, really enjoyed having you here as well. And the rest of our listeners and callers, reach me on Twitter at Sal, SALATCWR. Thanks, Hutch.
All right. Thank you, Sal. Another excellent show with a good interview. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. on Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. Wow, we're going through some hard times right now, ladies and gentlemen. But listen to the president. Listen to the intro. Go back and listen to that thing, man. That's motivational 101, baby. We're going to win this. You know why? Because we're freaking right. That's why. And we're not going to put up with this. This is coming to an end one way or another. We'll be back on Friday with Jack from the northern neck of Virginia. Thanks for letting us in to your life for a couple hours. It's an honor. Catch you on Friday. rsbnmusic.bandcamp.com. Please support Jacob Seals. I'm out of here. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.